Practical Anarchy, Guide to Self-Determination. Dickie Dread. Part 36. Digital Technology and Anarchism. From the beginning, anarchists have seen technology as both a tool of domination and a field of struggle. Digital systems are no exception. Just as factories once disciplined workers with machines, today's platforms discipline users with algorithms and data extraction. Yet alongside enclosure, digital technology has also generated spaces of freedom and experimentation that resonate with anarchist practice. The early internet carried utopian promises. Peer-to-peer file sharing, wikis and open source software embodied decentralization, no central authority, just nodes in cooperation. Just GNU, Linux, Creative Commons and Wikipedia demonstrated that vast infrastructures could be built without bosses or markets, using voluntary collaboration and shared code. Hack labs and squatted tech spaces turn these ideals into practice, offering free workshops and building networks of community computing. These initiatives were anarchist in all but name, federated, cooperative, outside state or corporate control. The free software and hacker movements exemplified this politics. Richard Stallman's insistence that code is law was not simply technical but ethical. Software should be a commons, available to all to modify and improve. Cypherpunk collectives built encryption tools to defend privacy, arguing that mathematics could protect autonomy as effectively as barricades. Hacktivist networks like Anonymous demonstrated the disruptive potential of decentralized action. No leaders, no headquarters, only swarms acting in concert. Yet enclosure quickly followed. What had been free was captured by corporate platforms. As stated earlier, data became prominent, while algorithms corralled attention into outrage and consumption. Surveillance capitalism fenced off the digital commons, turning users into products. The liberatory dream of web curdled into Silicon Valley monopoly. States seized the same infrastructures for monitoring, censorship and border control. What looked like commons became another empire, privatised, policed and centralised. Anarchists have responded by carving out autonomous spaces. Community mesh networks bypass corporate telecoms. Open source alternatives provide tools outside proprietary ecosystems. Digital security trainings equip activists to resist surveillance. These practices embody anarchist principles: autonomy, mutual aid and decentralisation. The internet makes new forms of solidarity possible. International campaigns coordinate in real time, information shared across borders, but only if people fight to keep it free. This connects directly with direct action and mutual aid, where everyday people build infrastructures of survival outside authority. The lesson is not that technology is neutral, but that control matters. A centralised digital commons, governed collectively, can empower creativity and resistance. Centralised platforms owned by corporations and states reproduce hierarchy. For anarchists, the challenge is to push every tool towards the first model and resist the second. Section 37. Capitalism's many masks. As we saw earlier, capitalism has never been static. From mercantilist trading empires to slave plantations, from factories to financial markets, the system has shown a remarkable ability to shapeshift. Each crisis or challenge produces a new mask, a disguise that presents exploitation as freedom, domination as progress. Neoliberalism, freedom as austerity. Neoliberalism, the dominant ideology since the late 20th century, promised freedom through deregulation, privatisation and flexible labour markets. In reality, it concentrated wealth in the hands of the few, while eroding union power, social safety nets and collective protections. Thatcher and Reagan sold the mask as no alternative, but the reality was spiralling inequality and communities gutted in the name of efficiency. Green and digital capitalism, eco-slogans and surveillance profits. Another mask is green capitalism. Corporations proclaim their sustainability credentials, selling eco-friendly products while continuing to drive deforestation, mining and fossil fuel extraction. Environmental, social and governance, ESG, investing promises ethical profit, but often delivers little more than greenwashing. For anarchists, this is a textbook mask, the illusion that capitalism can solve the very crisis it created. Digital capitalism is yet another. Tech giants insist that they are platforms of freedom and connection, but behind the mask they operate as monopolies of surveillance and data extraction. What is presented as empowerment, access to networks, apps and tools, is in fact a vast machine for profiling behaviour, shaping desires and extracting profit from every click. The gig economy, precarity disguised as choice. Even the gig economy is sold with a mask of freedom. Workers are told they are entrepreneurs, free to set their own hours. In practice, they are locked into precarious conditions, paid below minimum wage, monitored by algorithms and discarded when no longer profitable. Rhetoric of choice disguises the reality of compulsion, wage slavery in a new guise. Why the masks matter. Each of these masks matters because they show how capitalism reinvents itself whenever its contradictions become visible. It does not admit its failures, it repackages them. For anarchists, the conclusion is clear. The problem is not simply one version of capitalism, but the masquerade itself. Strip away the masks and the same face of exploitation stares back. Section 38. The false promises of markets. Market efficiency as ideology. Defenders of capitalism often present markets as the most efficient way to allocate resources. Textbooks, think tanks and politicians repeat the mantra that supply and demand, left alone, will find the perfect balance. But this so-called efficiency is as much ideology as it is economics. As Karl Polanyi showed in The Great Transformation, markets are not natural phenomena, but socially engineered systems enforced by the state. We already highlighted how capitalism arose through enclosure, colonisation and violence, hardly the free play of buyers and sellers. The claim that markets are self-regulating ignores that they were built on coercion from the start. Crises, crashes and predictability. Far from being self-correcting, markets produce cycles of boom and bust. From the South Sea bubble of the 18th century to the Wall Street crash in 1929, through to the global financial crisis of 2008, history is littered with evidence that markets routinely collapse under their own weight. Economists like Hyman Minsky argued that financial instability is not an accident, but an inherent feature of capitalism. Periods of optimism breed speculation, which eventually triggers crashes. Far from being unpredictable acts of God, such crises can often be forecast if one pays attention to leverage, bubbles and debt levels. Yet governments and corporations continue to act as though markets are natural forces beyond human control. Case study: Iceland 2008. 2008 financial crash provides a vivid example. Iceland, once hailed as a miracle economy, saw its three major banks collapse almost overnight after years of reckless borrowing and speculation. The country's financial sector had grown to more than 10 times the size of its GDP, fueled by cheap credit and risky investments. When the bubble burst, unemployment and debt soared. Unlike the US or UK, however, Iceland jailed some of its bankers responsible and let its banks fail rather than bailing them out entirely. While painful, the response exposed the lie that markets are self-regulating, showed how fragile miracle economies are then built on speculation and hubris. Excuse me. Case study: the crypto crash. More recently, the collapse of cryptocurrency exchange FTX in 2022 demonstrated how old patterns repeat in new guises. Crypto had been sold as a decentralised, transparent alternative to traditional finance. In practice, FTX engaged in the same reckless speculation, opaque accounting, and fraudulent practices that have defined financial scandals for centuries. Billions of dollars in customer assets were lost, with ordinary investors bearing the brunt, while insiders walked away with fortunes. Far from proving the strength of the decentralised finance, the crash revealed that markets built on hype and speculation are just as vulnerable to collapse as any Wall Street bank. For anarchists, this is not evidence of a bad apple, but proof that markets, whether digital or traditional, are structurally prone to crisis. Speculation and financialisation. The late 20th and early 21st centuries have seen the rise of financialisation, the dominance of speculative markets over productive activity. Instead of investing in making goods or providing services, Vast sums are gambled on derivatives, futures and high-frequency trades. Joseph Stiglitz has pointed out that this kind of speculation does little to create real wealth, but concentrates profit in the hands of a few while exposing the majority to catastrophic risk. The 2008 crash was caused not by overproduction of actual houses, but by the reckless speculation on mortgage-backed securities, complex bets that enriched bankers until they destroyed livelihoods worldwide. The myth of self-regulation. Advocates of neoliberalism promised that deregulated markets would deliver stability and prosperity. In reality, deregulation in the 1980s and 1990s dismantled safeguards, allowing speculative finance to spiral. Crashes were inevitable. The notion of self-regulation is a myth. As Zuboff showed, in the context of surveillance capitalism, corporations left unchecked will not only exploit, but also rewrite the rules to suit themselves. Markets without regulation do not remain free. They become dominated by monopolies, cartels and oligarchs. The next crash. Looking forward, many analysts warned that algorithmic and AI-driven trading could spark the next financial crisis. Already, high-frequency trading has caused flash crashes, where markets plunge within minutes due to automated sell-offs. As AI systems become more complex, their capacity to amplify volatility grows. A trading algorithm optimised for speed and profit does not consider social consequences. It reacts in milliseconds, destabilising entire economies before regulators can respond. This is automation's shadow. Technology that could stabilise and simplify human life is instead weaponised by capital to intensify risk. For anarchists, the lesson is obvious. Markets left to machines are no more self-regulated than markets left to men in suits. The mask remains the same.